Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. You can hear it ticking, ladies and gentlemen. The clock is ticking, headed toward the opening of the 2025 college football season, which promises to be different from any other. Because as you see, my co-pilot there, my trusty co-pilot, Bill Bender, is rejoining me here because we got some serious stuff to talk about, like players getting paid starting July the 1st, players getting paid on top of getting paid, uh, and uh, and just what's coming around the corner when it comes to the governance of major college sports, but especially major college football. But Bill Bender of the Sporting News, welcome back again to the co-pilot seat of the Tim May Show, my man.
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
You're always welcome. You know that you're the most demanded man in guestdom. Is that guestdom? Am I correct about that? I mean, you do a lot of these.
No, I mean it's good to be back on with you. That means we're close to um, college
Something
football season. Yeah, media days are coming here. I mean,
iceberg.
July 8th, 9th is Big 12 Media Day. So I mean, we're getting really close to
Yeah,
being back into the season, and it'll be a lot of fun. And as you know, at Sporting News, we got a lot of content coming, and um, can't wait to get started.
I was going to say a lot of content. It's no content unless Bill Bender's magic fingers do the typing. But I digress. Bill, you've got you've got red and black on, so let's stick with that motif, okay? I'm giving you one $10,000 chip on the big board, so to speak. One $10,000 chip. The black chip is Ohio State. The red chip is Texas. That's the only thing on this little roulette wheel or whatever I'm spinning here. You've got to put your money on red or black, not for August 30th when these teams kick off in a much anticipated season opener in Ohio Stadium when it promises to be about 115 degrees in the shade. Of course, it'd be like 120 in the shade in Austin, but I digress. But who wins the national championship just from these two entities, which I think could be the two best teams in the country when things are settled in mid-January? You can put your chip on red or black. Black being Ohio State, red being Texas. Where's your chip going?
Well, I think
That's not an answer. Well's not an answer. We don't have a
red.
well on this board.
So Ohio State and Texas. I, so red is Ohio State, correct? We're going red Ohio
No,
State.
red, no, red's Texas. I'm just
Well,
mixing
why?
things up in
Why
people's
would
minds.
yeah? Why would you give them the not give Ohio State the
Just
scarlet chip?
just because as I stepped into this manure pile, I stepped
Well,
into black
we have
first.
we have Ohio State and Texas in our national championship game. I didn't pick a winner. I'm going to try to be a little bit political here.
So hey,
Um,
wait a minute. So that's pretty prescient on my part to even name them the top two. Now go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, that's who we have. Ohio State. We have Texas. We have a really tight race for the championship game. I think both teams are going to be in the mix, and I think they're the safest bet to get there as the two national championship teams. I think with Ohio State, but the hard part about picking that national title game is they play in the opener. So can you really navigate your way all the way back to the national championship game after playing each other in the opener where one team will have one loss? I think Ohio State has more than enough talent to get back with um, Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. I think Texas has more than enough talent to get there too. I mean, and we're talking about, Tim, a game where these teams had 26 NFL players in last year's game. 26
Combined.
NFL players drafted between the two teams. So, yeah, there's going to be some not holes, but they have work to do to get there. But they are still two of the safest bets, in my opinion.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're paying attention to my premise, that I threw a premise out there, I didn't ask Bill for um, I didn't ask Bill to, in essence, analyze why Texas and Ohio State can get there. I asked him to put his money, his $10,000 Sporting News chip down on red or black, black being Ohio State, red being Texas. Bill, you've still got your $10,000 chip in
Did I
your
win?
hand, and you've got to make this futures wager right now, and I want to see it. You can't leave the casino without putting it down. Is it going down on black Ohio State or red Texas?
Ohio State. Why would I not bet
There
on
you go.
Ohio State to be, even though we do have Texas as the 1 seed? I think, and I'm probably playing to the crowd a little bit here, admittedly, because I know I'm
It's
in Central Ohio.
predominantly,
But I
yeah,
mean, it would be on Texas to win that game, and I say that in terms of um, Steve Sarkisian, back-to-back college football playoff appearances. You could argue that means Final Fours. Arch Manning going to be a really good player for them, but they lost a lot too,
yep,
and it would be on Texas to go in and beat Ohio State. I know we talk about in last year's game the goal line sequence and the play calling there, and I think there's more pressure on Steve Sarkisian to win a national title in that spot than there would be Ryan Day and um, Ohio State, who's coming off a national title, where there's always the pressure to repeat and the burden of trying to do that, which I'm not saying that's easy, but definitely an Ohio State team that would have I think they'd play a little bit free. Now, under this premise, Tim, that means I'm saying that it's going to work out for the Buckeyes at quarterback, whether it's Julian
right.
Sayin or somebody else steps in.
Lincoln
That means I'm
Kienholz,
saying
yeah,
Matt Patricia, it works out in that defense that lost a lot of guys to the NFL.
yeah.
And every time
Hey,
Jeremiah Smith, you can't get away from that conversation either. That means he maybe makes a Heisman run as one of the best Buckeye receivers of all time. So all of those things come together if Ohio State wins the national title. Not going to be easy though to go through that gauntlet again.
so what you said was did you put your chip down on black Ohio State or red Texas? I got lost as your mind because it's a major wager. We're not talking about walking in with as I used to play the nickel slots. I don't even think they have those anymore, Bill. So did you put your money down on Texas or Ohio State? Because we know this is just for fun. This is just for giggles. Um, who do you Here's the interesting thing. I think Steve Sarkisian is in that realm of uh, of Ryan Day was in up until January 20th a year ago. You know, he's had a couple of pretty good teams, but they haven't gotten it done yet. Ryan Day has that weight off his back, off his shoulders, and it was a big weight. We all know that, especially after the loss to Michigan last year. Steve Sarkisian is one of those coaches now wearing that weight, right? Who hasn't done it yet. But back to my thing, did you say chip on black Ohio State or chip on red Texas?
Chip on black Ohio
There
State.
you go. Yeah, I just
They're
want to
my
make sure that was
preseason.
clear.
Well, that's chalky. I mean, okay. So I'll tell you this way. If I could spread my chips out a little bit, if
Yeah.
Tim May would let me, it would
Yes.
be. I think there are six teams, maybe seven, capable of winning the national title this year, and those are two of them. And that's no accident. They're both plus 500, I believe, to win the national title on the betting odds. Then you get into the other two, Georgia and Penn State. Can Penn State actually win its first national title since
Yeah.
1986? And you want to talk about pressure.
Yeah.
James Franklin has the pressure on him to at least beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Georgia, you can't. Georgia does wear red and black, and they would fit in well with this motif we're working with on
Correct.
this show. And I think they're going to be very good in the SEC. And then you get into, after that, you start talking about like Clemson and Notre Dame. And I would say maybe Alabama. Pick a wild card SEC team that you think can make that run. Alabama, year two, Kalen DeBoer, I think they'll be better. LSU should be better. And that's really it. Maybe Oregon. So, and I think all of those teams that I mentioned will be in the college football playoff. So if we can get all nine of them in there, and the other big question, Tim, Ohio State, Georgia, who did we say? Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, they all have new quarterbacks. Texas has a new quarterback
Yeah.
technically with Arch. We
Yeah.
know a little bit about him.
Alabama
So
has new. Yeah. Georgia has new
Alabama has a new
quarterback.
quarterback. Everybody has a new quarterback except Penn State and Clemson with
Correct.
Aller and Klubnik. So that makes that, of those national championship contenders I mentioned, and LSU has Nussmeier back, you're dealing with a group that, do you trust that experience at quarterback, or you just assume that the guys stepping in at these major programs will do well?
Yeah, those are all good points. That's called tap dancing with Bill Bender, ladies and gentlemen. I think he did a really good job. But when you talk about 12 teams and stuff, by the way, I have a brief little conversation coming up I had with Ohio State Athletic Director Ross Bjork as we talked about launching in to the July 1st. PayPal will be your friend, for these sports at Ohio State that are going to be sharing revenue. And his team was right on top of that. We'll talk about that in a minute, Bill. But I was impressed by Ohio State was prepared for what everybody knew was coming, whereas a lot of outlets treated it as, oh my gosh, they've got a revenue share now. Well, we've been knowing that's been coming for a while now, and some schools were ready for it. Some weren't quite ready for it, but Ohio State was definitely ready for it. And I'll talk about that with him in a moment. But I wanted to get back to you. I'm looking at the national landscape right now. I've already asked you who's going to win it all, and I was being facetious because so much can happen. So much can happen over a college football season. Mainly injuries can change everything. A quarterback not working out like you think he will. And as much as Arch Manning was declared by one service I saw the other day as the All-American number one first team All-American quarterback, I go, boy, that is a leap. When you look at a couple of the guys coming back, like the Sellers kid at South Carolina, who I really like. I like the way he play makes, but he's a little inconsistent. But boy, if he plays on a really high level, South Carolina can make some noise this year. And I look at it, speaking of other teams, I look at it. I think Southern Cal is one of the most improved teams in the country, both from the transfer portal and then it looks like they've really gotten their act together again when it comes to recruiting. And they're not going to be down. They've been down for a while, but Lincoln Riley's easy for people to kick dirt in his face, etc. But I think they're going to have their act together a little bit more. So I think the Big Ten has gotten much stronger this year compared to even last year when I thought it was really strong. But as you look at it on that national landscape, what is I'm not calling those necessarily Cinderella teams. South Carolina would be more Cinderella than USC. Obviously, both of them are USC, which is pretty funny.
Uh,
But who's a Cinderella team for one of another euphemism that you've got your eye on? And I know you make bold predictions with the sporting news a lot. Go ahead.
okay, so first off, I got a good story about that USC thing.
Tell it.
My wife worked in Rock Hill, South Carolina, when we lived in Charlotte. She worked for the Rock Hill Herald, and I remember walking into the newsroom one night, and they were talking about USC. I was like, and I turned around to one of the editors, and I said, "Well, don't they play at 10 tonight, like against Oregon?" And they're like, then they just their faces, stone faces. They're like, no, USC, South Carolina. And I'm like, no, you. And I said something like, you're not USC. You've got to win a couple national titles first. And they were not happy, but
They didn't like that.
they typically don't like, I think I got called a Yankee at that point. So they didn't like that. But so anyway, of those two, I do like South Carolina a little bit. Their schedule is going to be tough. You bring up some really interesting points about USC. It's a critical year for Lincoln Riley. If
Yep.
I was picking a sleeper, if they didn't have such a tough schedule, I would really like Florida. I like
Wow.
DJ Lagway. I like how they closed last season. I don't love their schedule at all. I think Billy Napier figured out some things, but when you're playing 7 ranked teams, you're going to take some bumps along the
Yep.
way. So I guess they would be one. And then, Tim, let's talk about Illinois a little bit. Everybody's picking them. I've been asked about Illinois probably as much as Ohio State this summer because most people assume that Brett, coming off a 10-3 season with Luke Altmaier, that quarterback, that team returning, the one tough game against the Buckeyes, who are coming to Champaign, and the history of that rivalry as well as anybody. A
Yep.
lot of people like Illinois as that Big Ten sleeper.
Yeah. Dude, you can see that happening. Absolutely, you can see that happening because the thing about them, it's they're not boring's the wrong term. But if you put Ohio State up against Illinois in terms of pizzazz and the way they play offense, and really the way they play defense, you take Ohio State every day of the week. But Illinois has that way of being there, man. With Bielema, his program is funny. He's running in a lot of respects similar program that he had at Wisconsin in the sense of they will be there in the fourth quarter with a chance to beat you. You know what I mean? Type type approach, which, I mean, everybody strives for that, but not everybody gets there. But I've been impressed because they play solid defense, man, solid football for the most part. And then offensively, they do try to mash you with a little bit more whipped cream over the top. You know what I mean? Than maybe the Wisconsin teams had. But hanging on to Altmaier, I thought was a coup for them. You agree? You know, we saw the shot that Brett Bielema took at the SEC, an SEC power a week or so ago about one of his guys being in the portal and 12 minutes later headed to Athens. I think it was Athens, Georgia, not Greece. So what I like about Illinois is I think they're extremely well coached, and then on top of it, they got a head coach who will say things, right? I mean, so it's almost like if you're covering them, it's almost like a dream scenario, right?
Yeah, and he talks, and he's a regular like that at Big Ten Media Day. He doesn't have a filter, as we know,
Yeah,
and he'll say exactly what's on his mind, sometimes in a stream of consciousness form. But I like their team, you know, and their schedule. They are kind of set up. They do play Indiana early. They do play USC. If they can build up to that game against Ohio State, and Ohio State, even when Ohio State's the better team, they've had some interesting trips to Champaign over the years. They haven't lost Illinois since, I
right.
believe, the Juice Williams
Yeah,
era.
yeah.
Am I
In
right
Ohio
about that?
Stadium.
Yeah, the Teddy Lehman was on that team. It's been that long. So, and that's almost 20 years. Wow.
Oh
But
yeah. There were a
speaking
lot
of
of
stream of
questions about
consciousness,
that game, which we won't get into, but it
you're right.
was
We don't
an
have to, but
oddly officiated game. Go ahead now. I'll leave it
point
at that.
being, though, Illinois, you know, this is a really good, solid football team. And if you look at the difference between Brett Bielema's winning percentage, say at Illinois and Wisconsin, than it is at Arkansas, it shows he knows how to coach in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Arkansas, that just didn't work. That's
Right.
about, horses for courses, courses for horses, in that regard. And you mentioned Illinois. Who is a team? I already mentioned USC. Who is a team in the Big Ten that who's a team that in the Big Ten that you're most curious about in terms of can they either maintain, and I'm kind of setting you up because I'm talking the easiest thing would be to say Indiana. Can they maintain what they showed last year? I think they got an upgrade at quarterback. For example, the kid from California, who transferred in. But can they maintain, or will they? Or I don't want to put that in your head. Who's a team that you are? Just name me one team you're curious about. Are they going to be better than people think? Or are they going to be finally as good as they think they can be? What is that team? Just one. Don't name four of them.
Well, I'll talk briefly about Indiana. I think it'll be interesting to see how Kurt Signetti rolls this year. You know, coming off the playoff, you did mention Mendoza, good quarterback, got
Yeah.
some good pieces coming back on defense. The schedule is a little bit tougher. Obviously, they have the trip to Iowa, they play Oregon, they play Penn State. So nobody's going to say, well, Indiana didn't play anybody along the way. We've gone a long way without talking about Michigan. I think Michigan could be better. They just don't have receivers. And I do think whenever this NCAA ruling comes down, that program desperately needs that. Take whatever punishment comes and move forward, because this is the third straight July as we get into the Big Ten Media Day where Sharon Moore is going to have to answer questions about Connor Stallions.
Hey,
I don't.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I asked him about that last July in
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis.
I remember.
And he answered fairly diplomatically and stuff. Are you kind of eager to get this ruling or whatever? And of course, that's a year ago, right? I mean, and we're still sitting here. But go ahead though. So, have you named that team yet?
I don't. I think I can't take credit for this one, but I've heard others talk about it. I said keep an eye on Washington with DeMond Williams, and that they're the home field advantage. I believe Ohio State has to go out there.
Yep.
That's not an easy game either,
Nope.
because Husky Stadium is a tough place to play.
Yep.
You cannot go there and play poorly.
Nope.
They're excited about their quarterback. I think Jed Fish is one of the
Yep.
more underrated coaches in the country. So if I'm looking, and I've heard, the first case I saw, Bud Elliott was talking about this, and so I'm not stealing from him, but everything he said made sense. And if you were kind of looking for that off the radar Big Ten sleeper, one, you could go Washington, or you could talk about Iowa. And as Mark Gronowski the quarterback, the
Yeah.
FCS transfer. He's played a lot of big time football at that level. Can he actually get that Iowa offense going, or are they going to stay stuck at 7-8 wins again?
Yeah. I'll tell you, the team I've got my eye on, it doesn't mean they're going to do anything, ladies and gentlemen, especially you people out there in Omaha and Lincoln. But uh, I think Matt Rule's a hell of a college football coach. And, um, but I'm curious about Nebraska. Let me put it that way, because they do have a talent at quarterback, which can carry you a long way. They played Ohio State very well in Ohio Stadium last year.
Right.
And just couldn't quite, their bugaboo's been their bugaboo for a while now, not getting it done in the fourth quarter, and even with different coaching staff. So, but I've got my eye on Nebraska as the possible. I just think this Big Ten, man, it's so curious now because there's 18 teams, and everybody, for the most part, is trying to excel. Right? That's what I'm impressed by. That's why when that goofy quarterback Pavia at Vanderbilt popped off about uh, SEC games compared to big. I go, dude, were you even paying attention during bowl season? I thought Vanderbilt was an elite school that took only high IQ kind of people, but I'm not sure what he was talking about. Except he was talking nonsense about how every weekend is a battle in the SEC, and comparing it to the Big Ten. I go, man, look at a lot of things last year, including the fact that the Big Ten has won the last two national championships, has usurped power from the SEC, and I think that could maintain because the SEC was fairly fair to middling after you got past the first couple of three teams last year. And I don't know if you agree or not, but I didn't think it was a league overrun with powerhouses last year. Your take?
I think the struggle between the SEC and the Big Ten will be a yearly thing. Last year the Big Ten got the 4 playoff teams, the SEC got the 3, and it was justified. To
Yes.
your point that Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss contingent in a 16-team format, sure, throw them in. But we were at 12, and they took the 12 best teams, and they made the right decisions.
Yes.
It could happen in reverse this year, where the SEC would get 4 and the Big Ten will get 3. And if every year Notre Dame gets in, they're taking one away from those guys.
Yep.
Because I do think, Tim, on a yearly basis, the ACC will probably get 2, Big 12 might get 1, Group of 5 will probably get 1. And that's why I think the SEC and Big 10, instead of kind of squabbling with each other, is that still a word?
Yes. That's a squabble. That's a good word.
That was a good, it's early, but I wasn't sure. Can they actually work together to get us a 16-team playoff? Because then they'll get, in a 16-teamer, the SEC and the Big Ten will get almost every playoff-worthy team in. Maybe somebody gets left out. Maybe like a USC, like you were talking about, or South Carolina, the other USC, gets left out. But they'll get the teams that they want in the playoff, and you'll be in a favorable setup. So I would say in a 16-team setup, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, that the SEC and Big Ten will probably get at least 62.5 to 75% of the field.
Yeah. By the way, is it sportingnews.com or tsn.com? What's y'all's website?
We're still sportingnews.com.
Yeah, that's good.
And
that's cool.
They, we've got a lot of, obviously preseason content up, but I mean, we'll have more coming up. By the way, I got another good story about that. We are the oldest publication, longest running sports publication in the country. We started in 1886. So they gave us, I have it upstairs, an 1886 hat. It says 1886 across the front, Sporting News on the back. And I wore it to practice, my son's practice the other night, and our face-off guy, Madden, great kid, he goes, "What is that 1886, Mr. Bender?" And I'm thinking, like, I can answer this question. He goes, "Is that the year you were born?" I was like, "Oh, come on, man." And I told him this weekend, it took 3 weeks. I was like, "I finally thought of a comeback, Madden." He's like, "What's that?" I was like, "I could have said, no, it's your 40 time, 1886. So we had fun with that. But yeah, our publication's been around a while.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was a subscriber way back in the 70s. You couldn't wait to get the Sporting News to get the update on everybody's batting averages around the country. I mean, it was stunning how much stuff was in the Sporting News the actual publication back then, and stuff. Of course, time moves on, and now everything's available online. Why waste paper, right? But yeah, it was cool. It was much anticipated, much sought after publication, and it's cool that that it endures. And by the way, the thing that really upset the apple cart last year for the SEC was the fact that Clemson upset SMU in the ACC championship game, because Clemson wasn't getting in the playoff without beating SMU, and then you know the Cinderella season SMU had, the committee felt compelled to include them too, right? Even though they didn't have to. And see, I thought Indiana's spot was justly earned. I don't know if you agree. I thought it was justly earned. What a turnaround story. And if their quarterback had played a little better in the first 2.5 quarters, who knows what they would have done at Notre Dame. I didn't think they were a fish out of water in the playoff. That's why I'm curious about Kurt Cignetti getting it done again at Indiana, because I think once again, they filled in some holes through the transfer portal. They've gone all in terms of the NIL aspect of things. And so that's a program I've definitely got my eye on. But I didn't let you pick them a while ago because, let's look at some new blood, right? By the way, Bill, before we continue, I want to get to my conversation with Ross Bjork, Ohio State's now 1-year-old, so to speak. Actually, as he'll tell you, it's a 1.5 years now, because he was supposed to start in July 1 last year, but actually started back in February when Ohio State was looking for a basketball coach. But just my little quick conversation with Ross Bjork, which I caught up with him at the Buckeye Boosters Golf Scramble, which I played in for another consecutive year. And during his talk to that group before the golf tournament started, if I remember correctly, Buckeye Boosters presented them, the athletic department, with a $50,000 check, which is not chicken feed anywhere anymore. And it just goes to show, man, the fundraising has never stopped and is now enhanced in this new era. So without further ado, let's get my quick conversation with Ross Bjork.
Ross Bjork, I was praising you the day the House settlement finally became, what do you call it, record, on record? Signed, sealed.
Delivered, right.
We'll see if it's delivered or not, but
right.
You guys were ready to roll at the rollout and stuff. And just, do you praise your team? You guys obviously were looking forward to this, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a lot of people to thank. Clearly our team, our legal counsel, our compliance folks, our Learfield partners at Ohio State Sports Properties, our development folks, for really, having a chance to keep NIL, at pace here at Ohio State. Logan Hiddle, Kerry Hoyt. I mean, I could go on and on with so many people, but
yeah.
Look, we've had time to map this out. We have been thinking proactively. We had that press release ready to hit send on Buckeye Sports Group for a long time.
Yeah.
We were just waiting on the judge to sign it. So being proactive, being at the head of the curve. I just told this group upstairs, Ohio State's on the right side of the equation. And this was another example where we wanted to stay at the forefront.
Really interesting. Your compadre at University of Alabama was commenting, I think day before yesterday, about the fact that they've worked really hard to keep all of their sports 21.
21, right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You guys have 36. You were determined to keep 36 sports. See, that's what I always tell people about the NCAA. We're not talking about apples and apples here in terms of programs.
Right.
You guys have much more challenges than an Alabama does or a Texas does in terms of numbers of sports. Does it bother you that that's going to be, not bother you maybe, but to keep you up at night knowing that's going to be the challenge, is still going to be the funding?
Yeah, really. Look, we make a lot of money at Ohio State, but we spend every single penny, really down to the penny.
Yeah.
And so maintaining 36 sports, one, Title IX is part of the equation still. Two, the legacy and history of that many sports here at Ohio State. Look, our fencing program is one of the oldest sports. Baseball was the first sport here at Ohio State, not football.
Yeah.
And so thinking about the legacy, thinking about the legal piece of it, thinking about the opportunities for 1,000 athletes to receive an education, to play at the highest level, we wanted to maintain that and protect that. Now, does that last forever? We don't know. We don't know what the future is going to hold in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But for the time being, we're able to make it work. We're able to provide the funding. We've recalibrated our expenses. And now, again, I just told this group up here, the ceiling is still yet to be defined. So there's still a lot of potential here to raise revenue at Ohio State.
Hey, listening, when I look at this thing, I've been covering college athletics for 50 years. To me, I've always been on the bandwagon that players should share in the revenue. Ever since I started doing this, because you could see it, right? What was going on since the deregulation of television, so to speak.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you this: what do y'all need to get a grip, as in the NCAA, as in the governing body, on the transfer portal more than, because it looks like the NIL has a little bit of control to it now from the standpoint of the schools being able to have control to a certain extent, right? But is the transfer portal the hurdle that you got to figure out?
Yeah.
And how do you get there without contracts?
Yeah, the next phase in this, now that the House case is signed, is what does NCAA governance look like? We still have to make a lot of changes. The calendar, the recruiting schedule, the transfer portal, the playing seasons, the rules of engagement outside of NIL, outside of revenue sharing. There's still a lot of things to clean up. We need federal legislation, honestly, to codify a lot of this. But NCAA governance around transfer portal windows, that's the next step. We need to listen to our athletes. Our athletes want clarity. So that governance piece is definitely the next step, and we can definitely clean a lot of things up. And we if we don't do it this time around, then we're going to waste another opportunity. Never waste a good crisis, right?
Yeah.
So let's clean this up, and I think time is now.
Hey, real quick, a lot of people, the federal government, what are you talking about? But see, here's the point people don't get. Y'all are operating under state rules for the most part, and some of them are pointed. That's why you do need those guardrails coming from a higher body, right?
The only governing body that can do this is actually Congress.
Yeah.
And again, people don't like that. That's kind of sad that we're in this state that we couldn't govern it ourselves. But to codify House case, to codify some NCAA rules, to codify that these are students first, we need Congress. So there's work to be done. Hopefully we can find a window to make that happen.
Yeah, it's really interesting at the very end of that, Bill, how I brought up the fact that, you hate to see the federal government, Congress, get involved in anything to do with your life. At least that's me. But boy, it still screams, and we talked about that, as you heard with Ross Bjork, you still need some federal guidelines coming down in some form or fashion to really put guardrails, is the term everybody uses, finally on the NIL transfer portal aspect of things, but primarily the NIL, because we all know the Tennessee situation, how they are operating under state laws or rules that allow them to do this. Ohio's operating under state laws that allow them to do that. Alabama, everybody's got state laws, and this needs, just like the NCAA rules, it needs something that is hard and fast for everybody in major college sports, especially football. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we move into this new age, Ross is on top of it. Ohio State, I think Ohio State's on top of it on the business side of what they're going to need to be. It's like a super center, a superstore. They're one of those programs that can handle and take. I mean, but it's not going to be easy. When you're talking about how much money it takes, and Ohio State took so much flack for the whatever $1 million price tag of last year's team, but you could argue the investment paid off. They won it.
Yeah.
And now
wait a minute. And as it been revealed, as I kept saying last year, there are other schools that probably spent more than that, but they didn't publicize it.
and they'll spend more this year. The
Yes.
Texas Techs, the LSUs, the other teams have high price tags too.
Yes.
I think a lot of that was just based on who Ohio State brought in. And again, look at who brought in. Will Howard, Quinshot Judkins, McLaughlin, he won the Remington. They brought in the right guys.
And who
Caleb
they kept.
Downs.
More than that, who they kept. Go ahead.
And NIL helps with that too. And you saw that in the NBA draft last week. Our NBA guy, Steph No, wrote about how the NIL has killed the second round of the NBA draft.
Yep.
Because why wouldn't you? Well, why wouldn't you stay in school? I would have made the argument that if Duke was reportedly paying Cooper Flagg $26 million, I was like, I would stay in school. They were paying my kids $26 million. I'd be like, my financial advice would be stay in school for 4 years. and
Be
go from
cool.
there.
Stay in school. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think to Ross's point, yes, we need guardrails, and I don't. This is the 5th season that we've had where NIL has been a part of the game,
Yeah.
essentially. So it continues to evolve, and I think places like Ohio State can handle it. I wonder how the smaller schools will be able to handle it, but we'll see.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it's still going to weed out. You're still going to have the have and have-nots, and as we all know, I mean, I'm going to see how long this $600 or more NIL deals that have to be cleared by the clearinghouse now that's been established. We'll see how long that lasts. I mean, I'm talking about wow, $600. That's going back to the dark ages of what you could, allow players to have from a cost of living standpoint or cost of going to school kind of thing. I mean, that's I don't know where they came up with that figure, but we'll see how long that lasts. But you're right. I mean, there needs to be finally some streamlined guardrails. And I want to ask you this, Bill, because you make your opinions known. You make forecasts at the Sporting News as well as writing straight up legit objective stories. And I'm not trying to put you in hot water, but I want to ask this about you. It's been covering this scene for a while now. Are we close to having peace, love, whatever in major college sports? Or I anticipate the Pandora's box really coming open now from lawsuit situations challenging, just like I said a while ago, the $600 rule. Anything over $600, you have to get approved by this new clearinghouse that's been established. This right on down the line, Title IX has not been totally addressed. Ohio State has addressed it, but not necessarily around the nation, and how that will weigh in on the revenue sharing aspect of things down the road. Or is this just a lull, do you think, toward more chaos down the road when lawyers really wade into this thing with their muck boots on? What's your take?
And what does Jim Tressel always say? The only thing constant is change. I'm
Just
sure
change.
he's said that before to you, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
and there'll be more changes along the way. You've seen the realignment, the trickle down effect of that with Texas State going to the Pac-12. You've got to almost get like the old Sporting News college football guide. You know what I used to use that for? That preseason little
Yeah.
handbook. I used it to figure out what schools were in what conferences. You need
Yeah.
that again because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one of the things. You're like, wait a minute, Missouri State and Delaware are in the FBS now? Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And then from the transfer portal, how do we address that? Will NIL help with that? Will we go to a model where, we say you can transfer the first time for free and then you've got to sit your second time? That would open up with the lawsuits. One of the interesting things I've been thinking about too, let's say hypothetically, I've been getting this question a lot.
Wait. Let me interrupt here real quick.
Go ahead.
I like the way you're thinking because you don't even know, but you're leading to what I think is the most critical thing that's going to have to happen. But go ahead now. You keep talking.
No, let's take Michigan for example. Let's say the punishment is 30 scholarships or something like that. Let's say that's part of their punishment for, or if it's not Michigan, another school gets punished and they're like, we're taking 30 scholarships. Okay, we're going to use the transfer portal. No, we're taking away how many kids can transfer. I think that's where a lawsuit could come in.
Yeah.
Because somebody will say, well, you're preventing me from going to this school that's that's illegal. That's one that I could see happening in the future. The other lawsuit obviously is from the money. Are we having buyouts in college football now? If somebody, say Ohio State brings in a 4-star quarterback, he leaves after a freshman year, but he's promised does he get that money or does he? I think
there's a case on the table right now for that. There's a case on the table. Wisconsin.
Right. I think you should have to give the money back or you're not getting paid that money. If I leave Sporting News right now for another job, which I'm not doing, by the way, but if I did and then said, will you also have to pay me the rest of my salary for the year? I know what the answer would be to that. So why would it be any different in the NIL space? So I think that's something to keep in mind that, will we have buyouts when a guy goes from school to school?
Yeah.
It's not out of the question. The business is going to continue to morph and evolve into something that's really close to the NFL, and I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the lawsuit brought by Wisconsin, or the suit brought by Wisconsin, is they're claiming that there is in essence, a contract from the NIL side of things with that player who just abruptly transferred to Miami without being given permission to enter the transfer portal, for want of another term, which is interesting because that means in their minds he was bound to them by the contract he agreed to in the NIL realm, which is, see, that's where I'm going, because now for really this to take the next step, in my opinion, I've been saying this for 3.5, 4 years since the transfer portal and NIL came along, is contracts, employees are the two words the NCAA institutions don't want to have anything to do with, at least right now. Although that's the way you gain control, is to have your employees, players, under contract. Then you do control them. You know, you have a signed agreement, whether it's 1 year deal or 2 year deal or a 4 year deal. You have a signed agreement, and you live up to your end of it, and they live up to their end of it, or you challenge in court. But that's also the way contracts, or making players employees, which is the same thing, of the institution or of the athletic department, is the way also the players get true collective bargaining in this thing. And that's the next thing, the big domino that's going to fall, that most people have been running away from forever. So I'm really interested to see when that happens, because you know it, Bill, I mean, I keep bringing this up with people, this stat. The last time I looked, it may be different now, but the last time I looked was a couple of months ago. The average career of an NFL player is 3.7 years. That's taking into account everybody from, you know what I mean? 3.7 years. If you stay in college now for 4 years and you're going to be revenue sharing, like Ohio State football players are going to make six figures, you know, some of them solid six figures, just from the revenue sharing aspect of things per year. And then you add in the NIL opportunities. And let's say you go to the NFL and you're 5th, 6th, 7th round, especially 7th round draft pick or free agent. Your big money opportunity right now, guaranteed, is staying in college, right? And
For sure.
I mean, things have flipped so largely in that regard. It's kind of numbing a little bit to think about it, isn't it? Compared to 6 years ago.
For sure. And you bring up the contracts thing. I mean, what comes with that? Anthony Schlegel and Bobby Carpenter on their podcast, we've talked about that a lot, where Anthony's or Schlegs, as we all call him, or we are required to call him, or he may come beat me up. The 2 year contract thing sounds really good to me, honestly.
Yeah.
If we could get to that point and say, okay, you're whoever Ohio State's latest recruit was.
Let's say Joe Blow.
There you go. Well, okay, sure. Joe signs his contract with Ohio State to start. Says you've got to stay here 2 years. The NIL part will happen. You cannot transfer for 2 years. You've got to finish, the season with us. You can't talk to other teams like the NFL. Like you can't talk to Minnesota in the middle of the year. You're playing for us for 2 years, and then if you got stuck on the depth chart, you're not having a good time, you're homesick, all the reasons that college
we'll redress it. Yeah,
we'll readdress it. You can go wherever you want. Because what did they used to say? Here's the dual side of this. What did they used to say when kids used to go to school out of state, and why would they come back? They were homesick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that goes out the window to me when a guy like Quinshaw Judkins can come from Ole Miss to Ohio State and do what he does in 1 year, and just totally adapt to Ohio State from coming from where he was. Was he Alabama guy, right?
No, Ole Miss. Ole Miss.
No, but I mean, he was
born
born
from
in
Alabama. Yeah,
exactly. Like born in Alabama, right? Yeah. So he comes, acclimates, does all those things. Great example of how you can do that. Not saying he's, it's perfect, but I do think you should do that. And the other thing I think that we need to do, the big problem was the spring transfer portal window is now used as a negotiating tool. The Nico Iamaleava mess showed us that. So
yeah,
I don't think you should be allowed to transfer in the spring portal unless you're a graduate transfer with 1 year left. So maybe 2, you could stretch it, because we could go back to the whole Joe Burrow thing where he transferred to LSU after graduating.
Yes.
He got 2 years there. And I don't think anybody at the time at Ohio State was like, I can't believe Joe Burrow's leaving. No, he wanted to play. And we kind of knew that Dwayne was going to start at the time. So I think the graduate transfers should be allowed to transfer. But if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you're using that to make more money, I don't think that's the intent of what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, like I like that 2-year thing only because you could, both parties could redress it from the standpoint of, well, okay, we like where you've come. You're now going to get this bump, from a revenue sharing standpoint. And in NIL deals, schools now are going to have the right to kind of like administer those things, which is interesting. And we'll see where that goes, because the blue chips, the blue bloods are just, they're still going to hold sway, right, in that regard. But and then, obviously roster limits are going to limit how many guys you can have around and stuff. So if you don't think you've gotten a fair shake and or you don't fit, and it's been a big problem for you, you should have the right after 2 years to seek something different, or you just don't get along with the coaching staff. There are all kind of reasons why you should have that right. But to every year, sometimes every transfer portal window, that's the main thing. There needs to be one transfer portal window for everybody else, except, like you said, what it was in the old days, the graduate transfer, you could transfer and play immediately. The latest iteration until wide open transfer portal happens, that was already in play, right? And we saw Justin Fields, even though he wasn't a graduate transfer, that's a bad example I just brought up. But we saw a lot of people take advantage of that. Joe Burrow, like you pointed out. And yeah, you only get 5 years to play 4 in major college football, and you can wither on the vine. Everybody doesn't get a fair shot like everybody thinks they do. They don't. So I'm with you 100%. Let me ask one last question before we're out of here. Who at Ohio State, besides Julian Sayin or Lincoln Keenholz, who are battling for the starting job at quarterback, give me a name of a guy, because you pay attention, because you talk with Bobby and Schlegs all the time also. Give me a name of a guy you're intrigued by on this team that isn't Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, or a quarterback.
Yeah, CJ Donaldson, coming from West Virginia. And the running game, I've been talking a lot about Quinshawn. Where does he fit in the running game? When you lose Quinshawn and Travion, geez, how could I forget about Travion Henderson? He those two were the perfect tag team, and that's kind of how this works at this level. Does CJ Donaldson from West Virginia? I've told this story a few times, but watch them play Penn State a few years ago when they were outmatched in West Virginia, but he popped in that game.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, he can play. And then when we were over at the Woody back in, I think it was January, when the transfers were talking, incoming transfer Julian Sayin was made available that day. CJ was talking just about how competitive it was with peoples and drills and the pulling the tire drill, or, all of those things that they do at Ohio State to foster competition. I think he's a very interesting name. Obviously people are going to gravitate toward Bo Jackson a little bit because of the name, and that's easy, and because of the game, because he's popped a little bit as well. So just that running back room in general would be my answer. Who picks up the load when you took for granted last year Quinshawn and Travion were this guaranteed NFL tag team? And you know what? I think both are going to have some success where they landed in the NFL. I think Quinshawn's going to do well with the Cleveland Browns. I think Travion in New England with Mike Vrabel. Obviously, Vrabel has close ties to the program. He'll do well too. So as long as he stays healthy. So that feeds a first-time starting quarterback. Always is helped by a strong running game behind him. So those are the ones. I know that's an easy answer, Tim, but I was.
No, it's a good answer. It's a good answer.
I wasn't going to give you like left guard, even no disrespect to the Ohio State offensive line at all. But I am definitely intrigued to see how these running backs do.
No, because you finally pay attention to who's got the ball in their hands. I mean, that's what sports all about. Those other guys are supposed to make it easy for them.
To be fair, and then if Luke Montgomery is left guard for Ohio State, he's a nice one too. So I don't have much to say because I already like his game.
Oh, dude, he had a hell of a run. Pardon the pun, in the playoffs. That's for sure. He came. He was part and parcel to them winning that as much as anybody. Real quick, I'm very curious about how well Arvell Reese plays. I really like Arvell Reese at linebacker. He's a monster now, and we'll see how that goes. Because, I mean, Matt Patricia, the depth at defensive tackle is a concern, but Matt Patricia has a lot of parts there. He's really good at matchups, man. That was his coming from the NFL. You have to be really good at matchups when you're a defensive coordinator, and he's really good at getting proper matchups with people. And Arvell Reese is this guy who's been waiting in the wings. He played a lot last year, but he's been waiting in the wings to be a true destroyer. And I like that linebacker room right now, but I really like, from a really rising star, I really like Arvell Reese. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining the Tim May Show again, my man.
Sorry about that. I got
That's
so
right.
excited. I got so excited. I hit my computer.
You hit your delete button.
Yeah, like I was like, delete Tim May for an hour. No, Tim, this is always a pleasure.
Yeah.
I mean, I went back to, I know, like I said, start of our conversation, media days are coming up. I'm going to miss you at Big Ten Media Day this year. I'm going to ACC. I've got to take care of some business related things with Sporting News, getting some planning. Our offices are in Charlotte.
Wow.
I just know that if you're asking me on now, we are getting closer to another year, another grind. At August 30th game between Texas and Ohio State is so close, and I can't wait. But you're a tremendous friend, tremendous supporting me. FWAA for your listeners, any writers out there, we got to pull some more guys into that this year, and we will. So I appreciate you having me on, and we'll do it again soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Bill Bender. I'm Tim May, and until next time, I'll see you then.